Shortly after my 5th birthday, my dad found out that I was not biologically his. He immediately threw my mother and me out of his life, which now, looking back, I can't really blame him. It would be a nightmare to raise someone who is a constant reminder of your wife cheating. Shortly after that, we moved from a mansion to a tiny apartment, and my life has been lonely and horrible since then. My mother's love for me disappeared in an instant, and she and my half-siblings, who constantly blame me for being the reason for the divorce, have hated me since. I was repeatedly told by my own family, including my mother, that they all wish that I would die and never been born and things like that. I try not to let my half-siblings' words get to me since they were kids as well, but it still hurts to this date. My mother married my stepdad 5 years later, and he and his kids, my step-siblings, have made it very clear they didn't like me, and things got even worse. I was given the smallest room, no new clothes or things, and constantly ignored if not being bullied by my family. Both my step-family and half-siblings went on great and fantastic trips and were given all the latest gadgets while I was left behind. It came to the point when no one had wished me even a happy birthday since I was little. I had no friends at school as well. I was that quiet kid who was always isolated and left out of everything. I, 27 male, managed to get a full ride to Dream College and am financially quite secure. I have a very good friend and an amazing fiancée with whom I have a 3-year-old son, and her family has adopted me as one of their own. My fiancée also convinced me to go to therapy, for which I'm very grateful as well, and I'm basically doing great in life and have moved past everything. Recently, my mother contacted me saying she needed my help, money actually, because she has cancer, and I firmly but politely refused her, saying that while I sympathise with her situation, but it is not my responsibility. She should lose my number and never contact me again. I'm now hounded by my step-family and even my half-siblings that I shouldn't refuse. My response was pretty much the same, and I blocked them as well. Yesterday, my mother called me from her friend's phone, this time ordering me to pay since she's sacrificed so much for me, to which I replied, "You never sacrificed anything. You gave away everything you had because you couldn't keep your legs closed," and hung up on her. I have blocked them all and now just keep receiving messages calling me an idiot, among other things, from a few numbers which I promptly block. But now, occasionally, I feel quite guilty. What my mother did was horrible, yes, but no one deserves to die for such things. So, am I the idiot for refusing to pay my mother's hospital bill, even though it may lead to her death? Not the idiot. You've been unfairly blamed for a mistake your mother made. You were not the reason for this. You were a consequence of the reason, your mother cheating. You don't owe anything to them, and everyone must die eventually. It's no coincidence that they're trying to get back into your life at this precise moment when they need money and you have it. Please continue to enjoy the wonderful life you've built for yourself and leave these people behind. These are the same people who cry, "But we are family." Why can't the rest of the half-siblings and step-siblings scrape up money together instead of dumping it on one person? OP needs to keep their head up and these people out of their lives. Also, don't call her mother. She's just the woman who birthed you. She was never a mother. Not the idiot. Sometimes your horrible mistreatment of your own children can come back to haunt you. I'd have said, pretend I was never born like you always wished for and never call me again, just like you wished I didn't exist. I really don't care what happens to you now. Go ask the other kids you showed love to for money. It'd be the ultimate revenge if you were able to develop some sort of friendly relationship with her former husband, who she cheated on. Just tell him that his success inspired you to want to be successful, and thank him for all that he did because he was the best parent you ever had. I don't know if that could lead to something nice, but it might. While your revenge does sound very good, my mother's ex-husband and I never talked again after the divorce, and he married someone that my mother never really knew and has lived a happy life which he deserves after what my mother did to him. Not the idiot. You didn't ask to be born, and yet your mother thinks that all the things she did for you, read the bare minimum, entitles her to the value of your hard work. It just further reiterates that she and the rest of your family are toxic. I'm glad you didn't let the circumstances of your birth hold you back from being a healthy, successful individual. You should be proud of yourself. I'm doing an engineering job, making a good amount of money, and I save a lot, so I'm not broke. I sometimes act like I am, and it frustrates my boyfriend though. I'll give a few examples. A few weeks ago I went to get some work done on my car. I called ahead and the shop quoted me $150 for parts and labour, so I said okay and dropped off my car. Later that day, they call me and say my car is ready to be picked up, but the job was way more complicated than expected, so the cost was $320. I told them that was more than we agreed on and that they were still being pushy. I just go, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I don't have the extra money." I called around to all the shops in town this morning and went with y'all because your original quote was the only one I could manage. The guy at the shop kind of hummed and hawed, and I go, "Maybe you should take the parts back out. I'm really sorry, but that's way too much." He was like, No, I'll honour the original quote. So that was something I didn't feel that bad about, but my boyfriend said it made him uncomfortable to hear. Another time, we'd been trying to buy a new dishwasher, and the guy at the store kept trying to upsell us on like a bunch of different things, and I was getting frustrated having to say no 3 or 4 times over, so I go, "I don't have the money for anything but the dishwasher. No extras." My boyfriend said he didn't like how I lied. It makes him uncomfortable being around me when I'm lying because he feels brought into a lie. But the big stressor was when he said an old friend of his had invited us to a party to celebrate opening her business. We decided to go. I enjoy parties. I didn't realise that this business was kind of a pyramid scheme until we got there, and the party wasn't just a party, but a push to get people to buy in. So I started declining stuff by being like, that's really expensive. I really didn't expect to be spending anything tonight, so it's really not in my budget. And, sorry, I really don't have $100 for that. His friends stopped trying to sell me much, but it was a super weird vibe. It really wasn't a party where you could just hang out and talk and drink. Anyway, my boyfriend pulled me aside partway through and said that I was embarrassing him in front of his friends, and that he really wanted me to drop the broke act. I said okay, but I wanted to leave, and he took that as a sign I was being petty about what he had asked me, when honestly, I was really just not enjoying the not a real party. He's been kind of frustrated with me since, and when I got my last paycheck, he was like, "Oh yeah, real broke getting 10,000. And I snapped at him to say stop going on about it. Now I'm wondering if I was the idiot for using that excuse. My boyfriend thinks so. Am I the idiot for saying that I don't have the money when I honestly just don't want to pay for something? My boyfriend thinks it's uncomfortable and embarrassing and that I shouldn't do it. Not the idiot. If people don't take no for an answer, they will take I don't have any extra money. Just like I tell people at expositions that I can't buy their windows because I rent. They hear it, and the vendors nearby hear it and don't bug me. Regarding the multi-level marketing party, I hated being invited to dinners and parties like that, and the dinner was a cheese and cracker spread. I got to the point where I grabbed my wife and we'd walk out as soon as we would figure it out. Eventually we just declined dinner and party invites. Not the idiot. If a garage must do more work than initially quoted, they need to call and ask first. The guy wasn't listening to your no upsells about the dishwasher, so who cares if he lied? It shut him up. Lying stinks when it's to friends, but at the same time he was being pushy. What were you going to say? No thanks, I don't want to buy into your pyramid scheme. You are the idiot. Yes? You're an idiot if you're pretending to be broke all the time instead of just saying you're not interested. It comes off like you're too lazy to stand up for yourself or end a conversation or sales pitch, so you default to an excuse that you know will 1. Make people uncomfortable, and 2. Make them stop asking questions. It's gross and not the truth. Just say you don't want to spend money on something instead of lying. Not the idiot. Honestly, from the sounds of things you're saying, you're broke as opposed to stop trying to scam me, you absolute cretin. Your boyfriend sounds naive and foolish if his issue is with your lying about why you're not forking over money hand over fist for this nonsense, and not the fact that his friend is trying to get him involved in a pyramid scheme. Honestly, just from this, I'm wondering if his problem isn't with your lying because it makes him uncomfortable and more to do with something else. Unless, of course, he really is naive enough to go into a pyramid scheme, in which case run for the hills. My 19 male, sister 25, had a kid 4 months ago, and my brother 27 and I kind of moved into a house when she stopped being able to really work due to the pregnancy. The kid's father is not in the picture, and my sister was clearly struggling. We lived nearby, and the place she lives is spacious enough to fit us all, so here we are. My sister is an addict. She used to be high all the time when I was younger. She's been clean for over a year. Now that we live here, my brother's taken to have her do tests once a month, and she's not happy about it. She says that it's insulting and that she's not a little kid and that he doesn't have any kind of authority to force her to do them. Which, yeah, he doesn't. He's just bought them and been like, please take this, and she's complied. While up until now her thoughts about the entire thing were just her complaining to me about it and silently glaring at my brother when he came home with a drug test, she's finally actually taken it up with him, and they had a huge fight. It came to the point where my brother said something along the lines of, "How do you plan to raise a kid if you're always high?" And she replied that she was clean, and then she pointed at me and was like, "He turned out just fine anyways." Which is just not true. I mean, it could have been a lot worse, but I do have some traumatizing childhood memories stem directly from my sister being high. I mean, the fact that we have parents that make it so my sister can use me as an example of a kid she had in some ways raised is really messed up and not her fault. But ultimately having her as a parental figure is one of the more significant reasons I'm currently in therapy. So I would not say I turned out just fine. I told her a lot less tactfully, something like, "Fine, you're half the reason I'm in therapy." She stared at me for a second, then called me an ungrateful idiot and stormed off. I talked to my friend about it to vent, but she told me it was crappy of me to say that to her when she had done her best in really bad circumstances. My brother says she needed to hear it. I think maybe I should have just not yelled in the middle of an argument and been nicer about it. Either way, I think perhaps I should apologize for it, given that she's still very clearly upset, and it was a hurtful thing to say. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your sister needs a reality check. She doesn't get to decide how you turned out. You might be doing better now, but that's because of your hard work. You and your brother are willing to help her out, and she should be extremely grateful for that. Sounds like she has a lot of growing up to do. I think everyone's the idiot here. Your sister has been clean a year, so I can understand the frustration that your brother is still making her take so many tests when there's no indication that she's relapsed. And while I understand your bro's point of view, there comes a time he's going to have to loosen the reins a bit and trust her. Your sister has contributed to your mental difficulties and should acknowledge that you aren't the shining beacon of success she wants you to be. The position you were all in was seriously unfair to you all, and your parents have royally messed your lives up. But there would have been a more diplomatic way of putting it, and maybe your bro needs to chill a bit. Unless there's a genuine indication of relapse, perhaps a quarterly check rather than a monthly, so your sister can see you do trust her to manage her illness. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm gleaning from this post is that you two had awful parents, which led to your sister's addiction and likely a whole host of other mental health problems. She was parentified and forced to raise you either by your parents directly or just by circumstance, which had a further toll on her mental health. It wasn't her responsibility to raise you, and it was undoubtedly highly traumatizing for her to have to do so while also suffering additional mistreatment from your parents. She struggled immensely as a kid, and your parents should be faulted, not her. Going by the logic in your words to her, you are half the reason she needs therapy. Going with nobody is the idiot here because I have a hard time faulting either OP or her siblings for their responses to this specific situation. After all, they're born into an awful family. I'm 27 female and my sister is 22. We've never gotten along very well. I don't know if it's the age difference or if it's our personality differences. She always responded to me angrily when I try talking to her about anything like my mere existence bothers her. I've tried talking to her about it. She tells me I'm too sensitive, emotional, or just plain dramatic. I've tried mentioning this to my parents and they always just respond with, "That's just the way she is, deal with it. She's your sister and no matter what, she loves you." I recently broke up with my boyfriend and had to move back home. Moving back home has been very difficult for me because my mother has always been very controlling and doesn't believe in the concept of privacy. Since moving back, I've noticed that I've been feeling low and might be suffering from some slight depression due to all the changes in my life, breakup, move, and issues at work. The Sunday before last, we were having breakfast as a family like we usually do. All morning, my sister and mother kept making jokes about my recent ex and another ex that I'm still friends with. I tried to be a good sport and laughed along, even though I was upset about the comments they were making, but I figured that's just the way they joke. All was well until we finished eating and we started talking about Mother's Day coming up and what my mother wanted as a gift. She mentioned that she wanted new ceiling fans but didn't want us to spend too much. I decided to investigate prices for ceiling fans since my parents have the tendency to think things are more expensive than they really are. So I started looking at just the prices of ceiling fans to prove that ceiling fans didn't start off at $300 like they kept insisting. My mom had mentioned that she wanted a fan like we already have, so I showed her the price of one for $170. My sister saw the fan and told me it was ugly with attitude. I responded, stating that I was only looking at prices to show that they were not that expensive. She immediately told me that she didn't need my attitude. My dad immediately told me to be nice. I was hurt and confused. I asked them, how come no one asked her to be nice to me when they had been making fun of me all morning? They immediately started saying that I was being dramatic and that they were just joking around. After that, I was obviously fed up with my family and tried to distance myself. A few days later, I received a message from my mom saying that she was hurt and that my behavior affected the family. She said my sister told her that she was hurting too, that she loved me but didn't know how to show it. My mom keeps insisting that I blew things out of proportion and just get over it. Am I the idiot for snapping at my family? Not the idiot, but you should look into finding a new place to live. Your family is showing toxic favoritism towards your sister, letting her get away with things that are not okay. They are being hypocritical by telling you not to do something while letting your sister do the same thing. Has their treatment been fair growing up? I've never felt like their treatment has been fair. They've always excused her behavior by simply stating, that's how she is. Every time I try to defend myself, I'm told to be nice to my sister, that I'm the eldest and should accommodate her. I'm in a similar situation, though it's not through favoritism. I think they just realized it's easier for me to capitulate rather than address my siblings' toxicity and face their own parenting. I'm the youngest and was always told I'm the spoiled one. It took decades to realize I was being gaslit the entire time. You don't deserve to be an emotional punching bag, OP. OMG, at 22, you would think your sister was old enough to stop brown-nosing your parents and start acting like an adult and not a petulant child. And your mom needs to stop encouraging that behavior. And at 27, you need to move into your own place as soon as you can. Oh, don't worry. That sister's behavior will bite parents in the butt eventually. Hey, I feel for you. Your parents clearly have a favorite child. Tell them that your sister is being dramatic about being hurt. She can say something nice or she can keep quiet. Keep the distance. Stay out of conversations with her and talk only when you're spoken to. You deserve to be happy and not be ridiculed every minute. Get out of that house. All the best. You are not the idiot.